My. We have a nice, small, intimate group, so I'm going to actually start out a little bit differently and ask a couple of questions of you, if you don't mind. I was telling Sarah, I'm so passionate about what I'm speaking about today, and I don't want to keep you here for 8, 10, 12 hours, because I could go that long, and I could go in a lot of different directions. So I want to ask you a couple of quick questions so that we take what I say in the direction that you guys want to learn about. So first of all, by a show of hands maybe, who is here mostly because they want to hear about entrepreneurship? You're interested in following that course. Okay. All right, so most of you, thank you. How many are interested in the possibility of a family business sometime in the future? Wow, okay, great. How many are considering retail as that family business? Okay. And how about sporting goods in any way? All right. Any soccer fans? Yay. All right. I was telling Sarah, and I'm the fortunate one to have worked with Sarah when she left our company to come here to Marquette. We're still crying about that whole thing. So you do learn to, and you do get attached to people, and Sarah did such a great job for us that it was extremely hard to let go, but we still stay in touch, so thanks for having me. I'm honored. I graduated from Marquette 30 years ago, and I'm not really that old. I was just a very young graduate. Let's go with that story. I'll tell you a little bit more regarding how we got started. Everyone always asks, Stefans Soccer, that's kind of an unusual name. How did you come up with that? Stefan was my dad. So it was his store, and he named it after himself. And they talk about women, huh? That was about 1960. He had come here as a refugee from World War II. He was actually a concentration camp survivor and fled to Germany, of all places, as a Polish citizen, fled to Germany after he was released from a concentration camp and somehow got into the ice cream business. So to this day, I always tell him I'm actually a bigger fan of ice cream than I am of soccer. I'm not quite sure why he didn't go in that direction, but he didn't. So he came here in about 1960 and started a men's clothing business with his brother. So it's family business like immediately. Back in 1960, men wore hats and suits, and the retail landscape for men's clothing was quite lively, not like today, where everything's a lot more casual. And about 1962-63, my mother came to the United States, all on her own, an 18-year-old girl that decided she was going to America, and somehow landed in Milwaukee and met my father, and they got married. She's from Poland also. And she was a tailor by trade at 18 or 19. And so that meshed well with the men's clothing side of things in that they sold the men's apparel. People normally needed alterations or changes in the things that they purchased right away. And at some point, my uncle, my dad's brother, got out of the business, and it was my mom and dad that started this business. About 1983, I joined the group. Actually, I can't really say that. From the time I was born, I remember, no matter, depending on how old I was, I was given jobs, cleaning things. So that's how you start in a family business. Whatever is age appropriate for you, and that's how my kids started. That's what you do, or whatever's going on that day. In 1983, I actually graduated from Marquette. My father and I had very different opinions about business. He was a survivor of the Holocaust. His deal with God was just get me out alive and I will do wonderful things for people. I will give back. And that's what he did, and that's a little bit how he ran his business. So you can see in a family dynamic how if you're trying to support a family, your wife's working in the business, your kids are working in the business, and customers don't always have to pay for things that they take. that's where one of the problems comes up. With a family business, obviously, you can't just leave decisions like that to one person. Everyone is vested in it. So about 1983, when I had seen how this family business was going, I decided, I've got a business degree from Marquette University. What an awesome college. I know so much that my dad doesn't know. I'm going to go out there and blaze my own trail. And I decided that the family business and the small business, that's kind of not good enough for me. I'm going to go into the corporate world. Well, my start in the corporate world was commission sales for American television. Long story short, I got over that whole corporate thing pretty quickly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. My father was aging. He got to the point where he needed to get out of the business, and my husband and I bought his store on 11th and Lincoln for like $25,000, I think. So back in the day, the investment that you had to make as opposed to today's investments, startlingly different. So just to bring you up on the history, I worked the business all by myself, and that's all we needed. We did about $400,000 in sales at that point, one location. And at some point, brought in a friend of mine that was a part-timer to help me with some bookkeeping things because my weakest subject at Marquette was accounting. So she handled that for me. And then, we all did everything. We cleaned the carpets, made the sales, we kept the books, we did it all. And then at some point, my husband got into it. He left the corporate world also. He left GE. Came over to help me out. We wound up we wound up opening a second location in Brookfield, Wisconsin, then a third location in Mequon, Wisconsin. 6 years ago, we opened our first Madison location, so we left the Milwaukee market. And we also currently have a warehouse/office in New Berlin. And that's where I work out of now. So I haven't even been on the sales floor in years and years. Any questions so far? Yes.
When did you buy the business from your dad? Because $25,000 in 1983 is different than
92.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that. 92, 83. Yep. 1992. January 2nd, 1992.
That's a princely sum.
I guess what I'm comparing it to, like, for example, if I wanted to open a soccer store today and I went to the Adidas rep, because you need to have Adidas to do soccer these days, and I said, we need to get this done. I need to get Adidas in my store. I need to be an Adidas retailer. My minimum order with them is $150,000 for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, so compared to that, it's tough. It's tough these days. So that kind of brings us up to now. And yes, sir.
Yeah, what was the main factor for you to open up a new location? What really stood out the most that made you realize that, hey, maybe we should expand a little bit?
And actually, I thank you very much. That's a great question, and that's kind of where I was going with that. Now, obviously, with any family business or entrepreneurship, you still have a lot of decisions to make. We kind of make the distinction between mom and pop business, which there's nothing wrong with, versus what we consider ourselves, which would be more of a dynamic family, not small business, but we've actually crossed over into more of a medium business. And for each of us, and if there's a family involved, additionally, that's a decision that you need to make early. And you need to make sure everyone's on board. What motivated us is I wanted to grow past just being this one little soccer store. I knew that our location possibly wasn't the best when you take a look at Milwaukee and where soccer players and families are. The south side of Milwaukee is not the heart of soccer in our community. So I was looking, and that neighborhood was deteriorating at the time. Some of our suburban customers were a little leery about making that 20-minute trip. But it was a factor, and I didn't think we could grow. We were, the physical location we were at, there was physically no room without adding on to and buying more property where you could expand. So it was a combination of those, and the decision we made was we did want to grow this into the type of business where we owned the Milwaukee market. Back in '92, we were talking about owning the Milwaukee market. Now we have pushed against the Wisconsin boundaries and are looking for opportunities outside of Wisconsin. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Oh no, thanks for coming. So kind of point one is, what lifestyle do you choose? I talked about mom and pop. There's a lot of people that are running successful mom and pop businesses, and by that I mean, in my opinion, it's a one location business that serves and supports the people working there. And I think a lot of us find that little coffee shop that, maybe isn't a Starbucks, or we find the little flower shop where that lady just does an astronomical job for you. And so for me, that was the first thing where I realized, look, we really need to figure out what we want to do here. And my husband and I needed to be on the same page. And Sarah's laughing because it's like, yeah, if you knew my husband, if he was standing here next to me, you just look at us and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? We're very, very, very different people. In fact, right before we bought my father's store, I remember him giving me, he reads every Fortune and Business Week magazine, like he reads everything. And he found an entrepreneur's quiz, and he started giving me this quiz, and I'm just like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like blowing. I mean, I'm on the wrong continuum of where I should be if I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur. So he got about to question 4, and after I bombed question 4, he just ran out of the room going, oh boy, this is what we're really doing. Because I was making, at that time, really good money at American TV. So I'll talk a little bit, and I tend to just go if you haven't noticed. So please keep jumping in with questions, because you'll steer me in directions that you want to learn about rather than I want to tell you about, which is what it's all about. The next area I'll go to is the forces that affect our business. How a family business maybe differs from the usual business. I mean, in a usual business, you could probably all had business classes here about the inside forces that weigh on your business decisions and affect your business, and then the outside forces that affect your business. And those are all the same for whether we're a family business or not, or whether you're an entrepreneur or not. The added extra conundrum here is, what added forces are there to a business when it's a family business? So, you've got the usual inside forces. You've got employees, always continual turnover, continual drama, who's stealing from me, who's mad because they're not getting the hours that they want. The finances, are we making internal decisions well or correctly financially? A good friend of mine just went out of business, soccer business in Northbrook, Illinois. This guy should have just kicked butt. He made a lot of smaller decisions that were bad, but he made one really bad decision that put him out of business. And that was, he put $2.25 million into a building, and he just could never crack that nut. So there's some inside forces. The outside forces, you've got the economy. You guys have lived through an unbelievable last 4, 5, 6 years, the changes that have occurred. Another outside force is the popularity or the demand for your product. Back in 1992, when I bought this store, people went, soccer? So is that like, what do they call it? A hobby of yours that, you run this little store, and then you have this other real job, which is how you pay for. I've had people ask me that, especially back in the day, not lately, because who knew that soccer was going to blow up and be such a big sport in our country at the participation level? And that's what's important to our business. The MLS, professional soccer, professional women's soccer just plain didn't make it. They're starting up again. That's obviously not nearly as big as football or basketball are in this country as far as sports that people watch. But participation is where we make our money. We sell lots of uniforms, lots of replica jerseys for the fans, shoes. We outfit the participants. And as you know, that's where soccer is strong in this country, because pretty much every kid, and now you've got the added extra bonus of the female athlete really coming into her own in the last 10 years or so, especially in soccer. There's another outside source or a force that has been very generous to our business because it went the right way for us. This kept building in 92, even in 98, 99, 2000. There was a lot of questions, and there's still questions in mainstream media today. Is soccer going to make it? Depends on what you consider make it. Technology, our product, the internet has changed the way people buy things. Laws, Obamacare is something that's going to change the way our business operates and everybody else's. Sales tax with the advance of the internet has become a competitive force in our market, because if a club is buying $25,000 worth of product from us, and I have to charge them sales tax, but somebody else doesn't, that may be the decision on where they buy. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess going off the internet with how it changed people's ways to buy things. So you have like a more loyal following, I guess, with the internet, since your presence is there. Have you ever thought about, or do you make Stefans Soccer a brand, like Adidas and Nike does?
Explain the branding part of it, because we definitely make it a brand.
Oh, I'm going to buy Stefans Soccer shorts.
Gotcha.
Or T-shirts.
Gotcha.
Or stuff like that.
Yes.
To actually, kind of make your own soccer apparel.
Yep. What was the front end of the question again?
Do you guys do that? Do you guys have
internet
in that?
Yep.
Or thinking about going into that?
Gotcha. Very good question. We have a pretty unique approach to the internet. Remember, we have 4 retail brick and mortar locations. With the advent of the internet, people have the opportunity to shop merely by price from the comfort of their own homes. So we had to make a conscious decision. Are we, going to go on the internet and compete for that business? How do you do that? Well, you build a multi-million-dollar beautiful website, and you have to make sure you're coming up in the searches, but at the end of the day, we decided that customer buys by cost. What do you do? So it's cost versus what we decided was we were going to stick with our model, which had been working for us and it has been growing every year, which is our brick and mortar stores. From day one, our corporate culture, if it is, I don't know of a better word, has been service. My dad and his background taught me these customers, when they walk through your door, I mean, you do everything you can short of hugging them, unless they want a hug, of course, and give them one. And you'd be amazed at how many of our customers we do hug. But whatever it takes, I mean, they're the boss. It's that old-fashioned, we're so happy to see you. And the neat thing about being in a family business is we were all there, and we were thrilled. We were so proud that the store bears our dad's name. And that's how we live on the sales floor every day. And salespeople, even if they're 16, 17 years old that work for us, if they're not that welcoming, thrilled, hardworking, kind of, a mini entrepreneur, there's those kids that are the overachievers. Most of our employees are, 3.8, 4.0 students, and they are involved in a million different things. and yet they come to work and they're excited and they want more hours, and they really do enjoy the interaction with the customer and finding out about, well, Mr. 4-year-old soccer player, tell me about your game last Saturday. That's kind of what happens on our sales floors. And we decided we can either compete on the internet, where we're just Stefans Soccer, which is a weird name to begin with. We're not like Soccer USA. It kind of comes off like we're too small on the internet, and people, I think, on the internet have a comfort with dealing with a company that is larger, secure with your credit card information and all of that. We decided instead, stick with what we do. And this is, again, where you make that decision. Where do you want to be on the continuum of a business? And as a family, we can make those decisions. We wanted to grow our retail business, but yet do so not at the expense of margin. We hang on to margin. We sell at suggested retail when there's a lot of opportunity for those same customers to go on the internet and buy for less. And we just really, really are focusing on service, service, service. Now, on the other hand, we need to make sure that we're sharp. Our stores need to look beautiful when you walk in. They need to have, every 90 days, there's new colors of shoes that come out. Kids know when the new Manchester United jersey is coming out, or when the USA Centennial Edition is coming. They know. We better have it. We better have the right quantities. We better have the right colors. So that's a whole nother conversation. But we need to be sharp on that buying side, on the merchandising side. The stores need to be tip-top when customers walk in. So when somebody gets out of their home, drives in the snowstorm, comes into our store, and has that interaction with a really smiley, happy, wonderful salesperson, what's behind that salesperson matters just as much. And so that's our approach.
I'm sorry, you may have, since I was late, I'm sorry, so you may have mentioned, but you touched on sales force. You have, it's sort of the same with the running shoe stores that are local. I mean, I'm sure the local stores also, they tend to hire young people who are pretty well known probably in the local clubs and high schools and so on. And occasionally I think, in some cases that doesn't work. I don't know your store, but you see sometimes they're a little arrogant, which you don't want. But it's, have you found that the fact that you're getting kids who are not only smart and they're going, they're probably fairly well known in local circles, whether it's Metco, wherever they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sort of part of the, does that really matter or not that they're like that? Or, you know what I'm saying? But is it just that they know the product, they're smart, they're doing all those things, do the sales well, or does it also matter that they're part of those networks of local soccer players?
We could probably have a really good debate about that, and I could take both sides in that debate. And I've got a lot of history on employees that worked out and didn't work out. Today, my philosophy is I need someone with a good work ethic who takes pride in what they do and who has an intelligence level where they can do some problem solving to find the right product for a customer, or if something goes wrong, make sure they don't just kind of abandon ship and run, but take care of the customer. So my hiring now is less, because you walk a fine line between, okay, this kid is like the stud at Mequon Soccer Club. So Whitefish Bay Soccer Club hates this kid. And I actually...
both, by the way.
Pardon me?
My daughter favored both those teams.
Oh, I could tell you stories about Mequon Soccer Club. We actually, yeah. So there's a double-edged sword there. I literally had a club that once came to me and said, unless you fire that guy who'd been with me for 12 years, and they asked me to hire him 12 years ago, unless you fire him, we're pulling our business. You know? Being in a family business, I didn't have a boss or shareholders to respond to because they were about to purchase a tremendous amount of product from us. basically came down to my husband and I going, actually my husband going, "Are you out of your mind? You know, I had jumped through a million hoops for these folks. And at that point I went, you're asking me to do something illegal, immoral, have a nice life. So we fired them. It's the only time I've ever done that, and it came with a lot of sleepless nights. But it was that decision I was able to make. I would have never been able to make that decision in a public company because financially it was the wrong decision. But as it turns out, that club fell apart a few years later anyway, so yes.
Does the 80-20 rule apply to your sales? Because, you know, you talk about large purchases by clubs or, I mean, I guess universities even, or soccer associations. Is that, you know, kind of that they come back to you every year because, you know, they need updated new colors? Is that the core, or is it, you know, kids coming in because they outgrew their shin guards and, you know, they were 6 last year, now they're 7 and they're bigger and they need, you know, newer.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I feel like, you know, we should really schedule like a 3 or 4 hour session. No, and that's something that I feel bad because I didn't even explain to you guys yet. In the soccer business, for good or for bad, I focused on the retail. For the first time ever in our business this past year, our team/institutional sales took over our retail sales. So we have 4 retail stores where it's pretty much moms and dads come in, they get their shin guards, off you go. In the warehouse that I work in, we sell to the clubs, the high schools. It's become very specialized. It's a larger sale, obviously. We have a certain sales force that deals with those particular customers. And that is the portion of the business that while our retail grows every year, exponentially the team business is growing for us. And for the first time ever, it's actually a larger portion of our business. And we actually keep financials for both sides because you've got the brick and mortar expense with that sales force, with all those expenses in that bucket, whereas the team division is a very, very different bucket. And I started explaining to the other gentleman, the internet sales that we do are to clubs. We built our own internet website or had somebody design it to our specifications. I think it's the best in the country, and we're selling it to other retailers across the country now, where mom and dad go online to order their uniforms for their kids. And basically, in about a 6-week period, we will do $1.5 million worth of business in soccer uniforms. So there's a tremendous amount of transactions that are coming through. And in the past, the model has been that a soccer club goes to their soccer managers who go to their teams. The teams, mom and dad write a check, they hand a piece of paper to the manager with their order. The manager transcribes everything into one order, gives it to the club, who gives it to us. And oh man, checks like this, paperwork stacks all over the place. We used to bring in 6-7 years ago, we used to bring in people at our deadline time when all these orders are due, because everybody starts all at the same time, and we would just have stacks of paper and checks and people putting it into spreadsheets, and you know, it was like, whoa, Excel, this is the greatest invention in the world. And now we just have the parents go right online, and then the system just shoots us out the morning after the deadline. It shoots us out orders that are broken up in a million different ways. For me, it gives me a summary of this is exactly how many you need, 200 mediums in this and that and the other thing, whereas to the people that are in the back room printing, it shoots it out by team. Okay, this adult medium gets a number 12 on it. And so technology in that way has been phenomenal for us, and I think we've really exploited and done some really cool stuff to be able to grow our business, because we have a club from Wausau. I don't know how many of you are familiar with East Bay. They're huge, yeah, they're a wonderful company, but they can't get the soccer thing. They tried going to a lot of soccer clubs in our area and getting their business, and it's amazing to me, they can't figure it out. This club called us and said, one of our parents on the board is on another club and they ordered through your website. We want to do that, so can we buy our uniforms from you? It's like 15 teams out of Wausau. It's like, well, yeah, we can work that out. Any other questions? Yes.
So beforehand, you were telling us a little bit about your son and daughter working in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a flavor of what it's like to have now a second generation involved in the business, and how do all of you interact, particularly as it relates to your other employees? Are there any special things that you do? I don't know, being on a first name basis, trying to keep separation of personal relationships and business relationships. Can you tell us a little bit about that whole dynamic?
I can, yes. So it was interesting working with my dad. And because of that, I learned some things. The typical, probably what you guys are doing, my dad or my mom, when I'm a mom or a dad, I'm never going to do that to my kids. So that's kind of where I'm operating from now, because now, rather than it being me, the daughter, in the family business, I'm the one that really has the power and the decision-making ability that they don't necessarily. So my son is the older one, graduates from UW. What can I tell you? And is a mechanical engineering major. And sophomore year, I'm like, I know you're smart enough to do it, but he's one of these people like his mom. So it's like, well, what are you thinking? So he graduates with a mechanical engineering degree, and this is a little story that's kind of indicative of how things work, because I sit down with him and go, okay, Mr. Mechanical Engineer, 6 months after graduation, I'm like, you're still working for Stefans Soccer. Are you, I bought you this suit for interviews, kind of what's going on with that? He's like, I like this. I just feel like I'm a part, because just like me, he had grown up in the store working part-time, cleaning things. And he's just like, I'm passionate about it. I love it. I want to do this for a while. And as his boss, I'm like, yay. And as his mom, I'm like, yay. So we sit down and I said, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with you as my employee, my new manager of our Brookfield location. We talked about salary, benefits, expectations, yada, yada. Kind of did a little review of how he's been doing up until this point, and we had that conversation and we finished it. And then he gets up and I'm like, whoa, sit down. I'm like, okay, now I'm your mom. I go, this is where it gets really tricky. I said, your father and I have talked about this. I said, and that was a totally different conversation, because the boss in me is like, you got to stay with me for the next 50 years, because he's really good at what he does. People love him. And now as his mom, I'm like, okay, God, I remember all the pressure on myself as I was growing up. I had always wanted to work somewhere else. I wanted to work like in a real store. And I wanted to work for American TV and Target, and all this stuff. And I'm like, so what I'm going to tell you as your mom is, you need to respect your employer, and you need to be grateful, and you need to treat that employer properly. So if and when you decide that you don't want to do this, you need to give proper notice, and I spelled out what I thought was proper notice, closer to 6 months, not 2 weeks. But I said, as your mom, I want to make sure that what you choose to do in your life, because we had this conversation, obviously, while he's in college, this is what you do for so many hours of your life. It determines, we spend way more time at work than we do at home and doing fun stuff. I'm like, you need to make sure that what you're doing, you're passionate about, you remain passionate about it, you're happy doing it, you want to get to work the next day, and that you're doing it for you, not because mom and dad or the family business is making you do that. So as soon as that passion on your side stops or slows down, you need to give proper notice. And he's like, okay, that's kind of weird. I'm like, well, I like you. I like my son a lot. I think he's a really neat person. And I love you to death. And my, so those are the types of things that in a family business, it's like, God, I hope he never leaves. But yet you have to like give them the freedom to make sure, and the challenges to make sure that they're fulfilled personally, as well as it can't just be all about the family. And on the other side of my mouth, we do preach, a lot of our business decisions are made for the good of the family. With my daughter, different dynamic. She graduates from college with an art degree, and she was more like me. It was like, I want to go out there and see the real world. I've kind of had it with this little family business. And there's so many ways I could go with this, and I don't want to drag it out. Do you want to hear more about any particular dynamics, or is that kind of...
Well, then, could you merge that into the interactions with employees?
Oh, okay.
Other employees?
That's where it can go really, really bad. Or it can go really, really well. And that's, as I was taking some notes, I was like, well, this is really good, but it can be really bad. It's all about the choices that we make and what we make of them. The dynamics can be that your son is a hard worker, and the employees see the fact that he's working harder than anybody else. He's to work on most of the time on time, but he's definitely putting in the hours. He has an issue with it, this whole on-time thing. He gets that from his father. So you have the situation where he's a hard worker, he's a leader. People like, I've had people come up to me and go, I learned so much from Craig. I just love hearing him talk. And if you have that situation and the employees really love working for him and feel that passion, they're extra motivated because they want to do even better. Because it's not just myself and my husband, it's Craig, who's more their age, the other employees, and now they're really they're bought into the whole Stefans Soccer thing, because it's like, these people are awesome, this is a great family, and it motivates them for themselves, but it also motivates them to work harder and better for the company. And that's another freedom that we have, because we've always told them, the decision that you're making with a customer, make it for the long term. If we're going to lose $20 today, but this customer is going to wind up shopping with us for life and sending all their friends, that's what we're in it for, the long term. Whereas I think in some corporate situations, it's more of a short-term decision. Look, we've got our numbers to make. I'm going to get fired or I'm going to get demoted if our quarterly numbers don't come in right. It's not so much long-term as it is short-term. On how those dynamics can go bad with fellow employees is when they feel that people are either making more. I don't know how many times I've had the conversation with my kids is, I don't care how drunk you are or how you think that this person is your buddy and they're never going to tell your secrets. You never tell anybody what you're making. Because I'm not going to kid you. My kids make more money than other people. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. It goes back into that for the good of the family. And into the tax structures, which I could talk taxes and politics with you for way too long. So it can go bad if you have a son or a daughter or a spouse or anybody that doesn't work hard and is kind of arrogant. And, the people working with that person are going to be, well, why should I work harder? Even if they don't know how much that person is making, the perception is that they're making more than I am. And it's like, if this is how the family treats their own business, why would I treat it any better? I mean, it's just human nature. And so that's where the onus is definitely, I believe, on the family members. Not all family members are going to be able to work this way. My sister had the opportunity to buy into the business when I did. It's not something she wanted. Luckily, she made that decision rather than, some of this going on. Internally, more of it happens. The nice thing about having 4 or 5 locations is that, everybody gets one family member, and we're not, our family drama isn't in front of any other employees. It's at home or wherever. More of that actually happens between myself and my husband, where we're probably the 2 bigger decision makers, and when we're involved in a management meeting with folks, with our managers, and there's a difference of opinion, people are looking at, and people at this point, our managers have been with us forever, they know how I'm going to go, they know how Dan's going to go, and so you get some people coming to me or going to Dan, you know, and it's nothing that wouldn't happen in any other company, and we need to keep that in mind. The tough part for us personally is when you get home and it's just, I can't believe you said that in front of that person, and this and that, which, you know, leads to unhappiness in your entire life, not just your business life. And in front of other employees, you can't break ranks. We try to, as much as possible, have these conversations in private, and people know. I mean, our employees are very smart people. They know if we're taking different sides when we kind of go like this and we come back to it a day later or a week later. But I think that, number one, it's a business. Number two, it's a family business. So all that, you know, personal drama that you would talk to any other employee about needs to be respected between family members especially. I think I almost hold our family members to a higher level, in that we are setting, and we're setting the bar. Did I finally get it? Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Yes.
Do you shamelessly plug that you're local? Because, you know, folks can...
Branding. Yes.
Right.
Yes. No. Go right ahead.
Because folks can go online and, you know, if they want their new Adidas cleats from Amazon, they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, playing up that you're the Milwaukee Soccer Store, is
yeah.
that part of...
It's part of what we do, and that goes back to the other gentleman asked a question about branding. Yes. Very, very important, both of those. However, being local will only get you so far.
Right.
Perfect example. We were losing an account that we had for 20 years. They were going to soccer.com. Probably a lot of you, if you know soccer, are familiar with Eurosport. After about 20 years, I called them and I'm like, hey, we need your order, we need to get going. And they're like, no, we're going with soccer.com. New person that I'm working with, as they change every couple of years because they're still mostly run by volunteers. And I said, well, you know, we need to get going. He's like, no, we're taking our business to Eurosport. I'm like, really? There really aren't very many clubs in the entire state of Wisconsin that do business with Eurosport, which is something we're very, very proud of. I said, can you tell me why? I says, you know, I would really like to know so that we can do better in the future how your decision was made. And his exact words, well, Ann, I got to be honest with you. With all due respect, compared to Eurosport, you guys are a mom and pop business. I went, okay, yeah, true. We do this much, they do this much. I says, now, there's obviously a lot of benefits to dealing with the mom and pop. If you talk to the people that came before you, you know, basically, service, service, service. We had never dropped the ball on that club. Yeah. But there was a gentleman who decided, we're going to the big guys. They had just merged. They were like 20 teams, woo, which is like nothing in the big picture. It is big for Wisconsin, and he just felt they needed a bigger company would do a better job for them. And most of you probably already know bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. But there are consumers that think that way, and we have to address that. After the first year with Eurosport, they contacted us, had a meeting with us, and already told us that the next year they were bringing their business back to us, which is what they did this year. So, and that's where, you know, our keeping up with technology, our making sure that service, word gets out. And we do exploit that as much as possible. And we tell people we're local. But to be honest with you, I don't think that's why we get the business. Sales tax has been a huge issue, especially with clubs, because if you order online, you don't pay sales tax. That's an immediate 6% savings to our club. You know, you're immediately charging us 6% more. So you need to show them some pretty definitive advantages to buying from you, some hardcore examples, and so far we've been able to do that. And it comes from having not just the family members in our business, but all the members in our business are really bought into the whole, if it's not done, then I'll leave when it's done.